Thank you. It's so great to be here. Recently, I was doing some spring cleaning and I came across an old list from 2013. Apparently, I need to clean out my drawers more often, but on this list was some of my goals, and one of them was to do a TED Talk. So how wonderful that these years later, here I am. There was also a beach house in Hawaii on that list too, so you never know. But I wasn't sure why I wanted to be a public speaker, because it petrified me. One day my son said to me, "Mom, why do you want to be a public speaker if it's so scary to you?" It was a good question. And after giving it some thought, I said, well, I guess it's because my message is more powerful than my fear. It was a great realization and inspiration for me to be here. So, when I is replaced with we, even illness can become wellness. Now that will become more clear as I go on, but I just wanted to plant that seed. Relationships, human connections, they're what we need to not only survive, but to thrive. And I find we've lost sight of that a little with today's lifestyle. Personal disconnection is at an all-time high. And I'm sure you've all seen something like this before. Yes, I mean, really, if there was life on other planets and they were looking down on here at Earth these days, I'm sure they would think many of us were non-vocal, uncommunicative entities with devices growing from our hand. Well, maybe not, but you get my point. I actually find this picture a little hard to look at. It makes me a little uncomfortable. Maybe because I'm not a millennial. I'm a Generation X, whatever that means. But whether we're millennials or baby boomers, some of our greatest life influences have come from personal human connections, sharing and learning from our stories, our victories, our defeats. They're impactful and they're memorable. There's a social club here at the Army base in Chilliwack where veterans go to meet. And I find it interesting because some of them who were at once enemies now sit and share their stories together. Working with the United Way, I had the opportunity to go there a few times. And guess what? Never once did I see any of them with a cell phone in their hand, not once. We need to get back to more sharing and interacting like that. And the wonderful thing is, it's never too late once we become aware. There's what I call controlled change, where we make a specific decision. For example, when our family goes to my mother-in-law's for dinner now, there's a basket at the entrance where we all put our cell phones when we go and then pick them up when we leave. It's a great idea, and I love it. Oh, sure, there was many moans and groans in the beginning, even from me. But we got over it, and we have a much better visit now. Then there's what I call uncontrolled change, when our lives can change in an instant, without warning, but be a great catalyst for personal growth and human connections. Imagine it's a nice sunny day. Well, it's kind of hard to imagine that these days, but anyways, you're standing on the sidewalk having a lovely conversation with an old friend. You're laughing, you're chatting, and the next minute, you're on the ground and you're dying. That's what happened to my grandma when she was a young mom raising her 3 children. A speeding driver lost control of his car and ran her over. She wasn't expected to live because her right leg was crushed and the doctors couldn't stop the bleeding. But miraculously, there was a blood clot, but her right leg had to be amputated. So in that split second, her whole entire life completely changed. But what she did with it was remarkable. She lived on to help all those in our community who would lose a limb, taking them to the best prosthetic places and telling them that they were going to be okay. through her example, showing them that life can still be happy and fulfilling, even missing a part of their body. And she was one of the happiest people I ever knew. I had the pleasure of spending a lot of weekends growing up on her farm, and in the mornings being drawn into the kitchen with the homemade smell of breakfast cooking. There would be Grandma. And she would always say to me every time, "Oh, good morning, Kimmy. It's another beautiful day." And often I remember thinking, it's raining out. What's so great about it? It wasn't until many years later I got what she meant. She meant it was another day that we could eat breakfast with the ones we love, share our experiences, our stories, and try to do well by others. When tragedy struck my own life, I wasn't so sure I could follow in her example. Life had been so easy for me. I had the most wonderful parents with the greatest upbringing who filled my life with unconditional love and support. And in my adulthood, I was lucky enough to meet and marry my very kind and handsome husband. We bought a cute little house, and we're growing our family and had our first baby girl, Jessie. It was quite wonderful. And then came May 29th, 1998. And just like that, everything changed. I was about 3 weeks away from my due date with our second baby when terrible abdominal pain sent me into emergency. Within minutes of laying on the hospital bed, I felt a huge gush of fluid, and I thought, oh, my waters just broke. But that wasn't the case. The next thing I know, I was wheeled into the OR for emergency surgery. My placenta had detached, and I was losing a lot of blood. When I became conscious, I was told that I had delivered a baby boy, but the look on the nurse's face held me back from articulating any joy, and her next words would explain why. "I'm sorry, Kim, but your baby's very sick. He has a critical heart defect, and a team of specialists from Children's Hospital are coming to pick him up." So Avery was whisked away before I even got a chance to hold him. And for 2 days I laid in my hospital bed wondering if I'd ever get to see him again. And what followed was pretty much months of devastation. Avery would go through multiple heart surgeries, renal failures, cold blues, and much more. And in the midst of his valiant battle to survive, my dad and mentor suddenly dies one day at home from a heart attack. And then after that, our beautiful little Jessie received an autism diagnosis. So this perfect little life of mine was very quickly unraveling. I felt like a tornado had lifted me up and landed me on another planet. I'm the biggest wimp. I'm not equipped to deal with this. But somehow a morsel of strength wiggled its way in, and all the love and support I've had and all the life lessons I've learned rose to the surface to help me when I needed it most. Thankfully, gratefully, after many months, we were able to bring Avery home with his heart all patched up. He was in pretty rough shape, but with years of therapies and treatments, he's now a healthy young man who just graduated from high school last year with honors. Even winning the Nelson Mandela Hardest Working Student Award. Here we are with our stylish graduate, who picked out his own suit, by the way, did a very good job. And there's our happy little Jessie, who's doing very well too. Her illuminating smile is positively contagious. Her favorite things to do are volunteering to seniors, especially delivering Meals on Wheels, except for she never wants to leave, because if you're over 80, she'll want to be your best friend. It hasn't been easy to get to this point. We had to work damn hard. But what I thought was the worst thing that could have happened back in 1998 ended up being one of the best. Avery and Jessie are true blessings who've taught me humility and acceptance and the desire to show people how life can be wonderful, even if it doesn't go as we expected or planned. People used to say things to me like, "Oh, you poor thing. You've been through so much hardship already in your life." They didn't get it. I was feeling so blessed, but they were feeling sorry for me. But that's okay, because it inspired me to know that I had a message and to use my experience, transforming it into a purpose to help others. So I wondered, what makes somebody want to give up on life, lose faith, fall into depression, versus rising up, finding gratitude, purpose in their adversities? Well, of course, there are many factors, but certainly a very important one is personal human connections, having mentors, examples like my grandma. We're all going to go through tough times, events, circumstances that could cripple us, but love and support can save us. I find, however, we're slowly becoming a little more isolated. So much of our communicating is done online now. And although we might have 500 or more friends on Facebook, many of us are lonely. We're too plugged in. We're too self-absorbed. And I think one of the longest studies in history would agree. Harvard University's study on human development, otherwise known as the happiness study, began 79 years ago, tracking 724 men from all various backgrounds, still following the over 50 surviving men and their families today. And after interpreting tens of thousands of pages of material, the outcome has been simple and clear. It's good relationships that keep us living happier and longer, more so than anything else. It's our social connections with friends and family that keep us living longer and healthier. Of course, technology is making life easier for us in many ways. We can pay our bills online, and that frees up more time for Candy Crush. But are we really getting ahead here? It's just, technology can be a great thing. The internet is a great resource, but it can also be very ambiguous and misleading, of which I learned a very good lesson about last month when I cut the bottom of my foot moving my treadmill. Long story, but anyways, I developed a very bad infection, very painful and challenging to get rid of. I was on all kinds of antibiotics with having adverse reactions. And upon Googling infections and antibiotics, big mistake, and some of you probably know why because you've done this before, I pretty much had diagnosed my foot as dead and gone from bacterial flesh-eating disease. As you can see, that's not the case, thankfully, and I'll leave all the diagnosing up to my doctor from now on. But on the other hand, there's a dear friend of mine who was reunited with her long-lost love after nearly 20 years through Facebook. That was a few years ago, and they're still making up for lost time. But with balance and awareness, we all can live happily adjusted lives with strong relationships in this crazy virtual world. At the end of the day, I always like to do a little rerun and ask how I thought today went. Is there anything I could have done differently? Did I smile much? Or did I make anyone else smile? When we smile at someone, it coaxes them to smile back at us. And it actually releases feel-good chemicals in our brain that helps us look more attractive and increases our chances of living longer. One of the reasons we like to be around babies so much is because they smile up to 400 times a day, versus the happy adult who smiles 50 times, and the average being only 20 or less. We need to smile more. And why not? It's good for us. So let's practice our smiles right now. Let me see those smiles. Come on. Awesome. Now look how much better looking you already are. Every morning when I wake up, the first thing I see across the room is a beautiful painting of colorful butterflies that my daughter painted. And every morning it makes me smile. It's a great way to start the day. So in closing, I hope I've helped create a little more awareness on the vitality of human connections. Opening up to share our stories because they can be the best influences. And maybe try to pay a little more attention to each other and less to our devices. Because after all, I'm sure your most impactful life experiences weren't created online. And humanity can't exist without love and compassion. Fulfillment isn't about objects or things. True fulfillment is about our relationships. And we must always remember that no matter how wrapped up our world gets in technology and innovation, it will always be the power of the human connections that will sustain us. So when I is replaced with we, even illness can become wellness. Thank you. Thank you.